Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Hello and welcome to episode 903 with Donna McGeorge. Donna is back this time talking about a totally different topic as compared to last time. We're talking ChatGPT. Maybe you've used it. Maybe you've heard about it. Maybe you're scared of it. Maybe you've been disappointed by it. Donna shares some excellent wisdom on how to make this thing useful, save you boatloads of time using the power of the much hyped AI and determining when it's probably not the right move at all to go there. So great stuff from Donna. You'll learn 1, how to get started with ChatGPT if you've never used it before. 2, what ChatGPT does better and worse than a human. And 3, tips and tricks and prompts to get the most out of ChatGPT. So if you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP903. Now here's a little bit about Donna. Donna McGeorge is a passionate productivity coach with modern time management strategies designed to enhance the amount of time we spend in our workplace. With more than 20 years of experience working with managers and leaders throughout Australia and Asia Pacific, Donna delivers practical skills training, workshops, and facilitation to corporations such as Nissan, Jetstar, and Ford, so they learn to manage their people well and produce great performance and results. She's a captivating, upbeat, and engaging resource on time management and productivity who has been featured on The Today Show, radio interviews across Australia, and written for publications including The Age, Boss Magazine, Smart Company, and many more. So big thanks to Donna for sharing her wisdom with us, and big thanks to our sponsor, Dash Hudson. If you do marketing work or manage social media, it can feel totally overwhelming navigating the ever-changing social media landscape. Great marketers need access to the latest insights and best practices to thrive without spending eons keeping up with the latest everything. A great resource for that is Dash Hudson's Social Media Trends Report. Dash Hudson is a social media management platform that delivers sophisticated insights and workflow tools. Dash Hudson is trusted by thousands of brands like United Airlines, Rare Beauty, and P&G. It keeps you in the know and saving time. Dash Hudson is proud to offer their highly anticipated Social Media Trends Report. The free report unveils the social media industry's leading trends and insights. One of my personal favorites was, check this out, the creators, when they post on behalf of a brand on Instagram, they had 16 times the engagement rate as compared to when the brands directly, natively engaged on Instagram. Go through the influencer, eh? 16 times. That's just good to know. You can learn that and so much more by downloading their trends report and signing up for a free 14-day trial of Dash Hudson today at dashhudson.com/podcast. That's dashhudson.com/podcast. Now, here's Donna. Donna, welcome back to How to Be Awesome at Your Job.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Great to be here.
Well, I am so excited to be chatting with you about ChatGPT. It's it's overdue, frankly, that we've had an episode dedicated to this. And Donna, you just happen to be an expert and we already love you. So I'm stoked to be chatting again.
It's not as overdue as you think. I'm quite surprised at how I thought ChatGPT would be taken up by millions. Well, it has, but like it'd be all over the place by now. But it's been a little slower than I thought.
Well, yeah, I just saw some research from Pew, and this is maybe in July, so it's probably a little higher by now, that in the US, about 60-ish% of people had heard of ChatGPT. And of those who had heard of it, who have college degrees, which is most of our listeners in the US, about 32% of folks had used it. Does that sound about right from what you've seen in your research as well?
Yeah. And so my research is mostly standing in a conference and asking people to raise their hand. And so when if I've got a room full of people and I say, how many of you have heard of it? It's the same. It's around 60 to 70% of hands go up. And then keep your hand up if you've actually used it or you are using it. And the hands drop considerably. And then I say, now who's loving it and using it pretty much for their everyday world? And then the hands drop again in terms of using it consistently. So, but again, that's pretty anecdotal just from watching crowds.
Okay. Well, no, it's just good to get a pressure test on that because sort of in my world, it comes up a lot. And so it's just good to get some context.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if I'm just in a bubble, but everyone I know is using it. But it's like I go out into the world and I find all these people that, some have never even heard of it. It's like, wow, we've been living under a rock, because that's how it feels to me anyway.
And I think that it's funny when it comes to many tools. I remember it had been years until I learned that I could enable shortcut keys in Gmail. And I was like, how come nobody told me about this? All these years, how many hours have been burned without me knowing I could enable shortcut keys at Gmail? But then I did, and I never went back. And actually, I went with Superhuman to kick it up another notch. But so yes, tools can take a while to permeate. And that's what I want to chat about, is because there's a lot of hype. And well, maybe why don't we start with it? Since not everybody is familiar, let's take maybe 3 minutes. What is ChatGPT? How do we get it and use it? And why bother?
All right. So I'm not going to go down the massive technical path. If people are hugely interested in the technical back end of it all, I'll let them go Google that. But in terms of what you need to know to use it every day, it's a large language model. It's been trained on. What that means is it's had access to all published written communication up until about September 2021. So that's all books, all articles, all websites, all research papers, pretty much everything. So the way I like to think of it is it's like a librarian that has read every book ever written, read any paper, looked at every website, remembers anything, and can quote from it ad nauseum, really. You ask it a question, it can pull from all of that knowledge to give you a reasonable answer. And so, look, it has its pitfalls. If you know a little bit about it, you've probably read some of the negative stuff. Because it's pulling data from all over the place, sometimes it puts stuff together that's not true. The technical term for that is hallucination. And certainly sometimes when I've asked it to give me references for various bits of stuff that I'm looking for, it makes up whole references, puts whole names of scientists together and says they've written a paper, and they just never did.
Right. Indeed. So well said. Thank you. All right. So we've got an artificial intelligence, a large language model it's called, and it's read the whole internet, or a good fraction of it, and a bunch of books and stuff. And thusly you can interact with it. And so if someone's like, whoa, that is cool, how do I do it? How do I get there? How do I play with it?
Okay. The easiest way is to go and register a free account with OpenAI. And you can get started straight away. What I'll do is, Pete, I'll send you, and you can put it in the show notes. I've got a list of prompts across a range of different aspects of both our professional and personal life. It's straight out of the book that I've written, but it can give people something to play with rather than just sitting there looking at it going, I don't even know how to start. Because it's so big, and it's got so many potential uses. But, I hear someone even today say, hey, I used it for X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, I would never have even thought of that. So it's not exactly something you can just go and sit in front of and start playing with. You got to have a reason. So yeah, go register a free account. It'll talk to you probably about the paid version. I would say 80% of my use is with the free version. I've got the paid version, but I mostly use the free version. And go play around with it with something that's relatively harmless, like, I don't know, meal planning and holiday planning, just to see what it's capable of.
That's right. So openai.com and click try ChatGPT. And so you can sort of start taking a look. And you're right. You just have a box. You can type anything into it and then it will go forth. You can say, hey, tell me a poem about sand timers. And it will tell me any number of things. I have a buddy who likes to say, hey, rewrite this email I just wrote, but make it more polite. And then it does the things he forgets to say, like, hello, hope you had a great weekend. He's like, oh yeah, I probably should have said that. Okay, yeah, thanks, ChatGPT. So that's really where I think you could be super useful here, is to help us understand, like, what is overly hyped and just sort of silly. Like, are the robots taking over mankind? They're going to enslave us. Is this the answer to everything and we're all going to get fired? Like, what's too much hype? And what is really possible for us right here, right now, that's useful, that can save us time and increase our results at work?
Okay, so the overhyped stuff is, it could be because I come at it from a more Star Trek optimistic future of the world where humans are awesome and everyone's getting along nicely and we've got the occasional attack from Klingons. Like, that's kind of, so I have a more utopian view of the future. So I don't believe robots are going to take over the world. I think this could be 1,000 years from now an evolutionary marker where humans just get again, a whole level of smarter than the technology that we're creating. It could be. I certainly don't think we're going to see wholesale loss of jobs, no more or less than any other technological breakthrough that has created some loss of jobs, but created some new ones. So I'm old enough to remember when the internet first came out and all the kind of palaver we're hearing now about it's going to take jobs, it's going to destroy the world. All of that started to happen when the internet became a thing that we carried around in our pockets or was on our desktops or was readily available. So it's the same kind of technophobia that's been around since the printing press was a thing. And so what we'll see is new jobs or new ways of doing work. So my advice around this is let's not worry, is it going to take my job? I can't remember who said this, but it's been floating around for a while. Don't worry about it taking your job. Worry about someone who adopts AI and uses tools like this. They'll probably take your job. So if you don't keep up with it, then that you're more at risk of that than losing it straight out to AI. Having said that, gosh, there's some mundane administrative things that we do on a day-to-day basis that AI could be really helpful for, like any kind of repetitive processing or data entry that has a human looking at some kind of written file and then typing it into some kind of system. I mean, there's already systems that do that. So I suspect that's the kind of work that would go away.
And for right now, today, something that professionals can use ChatGPT to assist them with, I'd love to get your perspective. I know that some folks, if English or whatever language is not their first language, and it's maybe a little bit rough, they'll say what they're roughly trying to say in the language that they mostly know. And then ChatGPT can just give it an automatic polish that has a little bit more smarts to it than, say, a spell check, a grammar check. So that's sure handy. Tell us, what else are you seeing is super useful that folks are doing right now?
Right. So look, hardly even know where to start, but I actually think this is a massive literacy game changer. So you talked about English as a second language. I'm going to go back to the kids that struggled at school because written comms wasn't that easy for them, or they were dyslexic and then so they left early and have now considered themselves not terribly well educated, can't spell, don't know grammar terribly well, and that holds them back. And so this is an absolute literacy game changer. So we don't ever have to worry about that again. In fact, there's already stories about people who are saying, here's what I want to write at misspelled, no grammar, really poorly strung together sentences, whack it into ChatGPT and it comes with a dear madam, perfect kind of phrased email. So what I know as someone who writes a lot about productivity is one of the biggest bugbears of many people is email. And so first of all, it's volume. So volume of email. I don't know that ChatGPT can help us with that just yet. But certainly sometimes the time we spend responding to something that's a bit tricky. So as you said before, your friend that had to says, here's what I want to say, now make it sound slightly empathetic and friendly. Well, people are using it heaps for writing emails. In fact, I predict once Microsoft get their act together with this, there'll probably be a button in your Outlook email in the future, maybe Google as well, that you click on that says compose a response and it will automatically generate a response for you. So that's going to save us a pile of time. But right now you can already do that. I even did it myself recently. I needed a delicate no letter. Someone wanted to work with me, not really my thing. They were pretty insistent. So I said, hey, help me write a really delicate letter that's assertive in my no. I don't want to roll over, but maintains the relationship. So I'm going to say any written comms. So as a business owner, I struggle with writing about myself, bios, website copy, email newsletters, social media copy. That's the sort of stuff I struggle with. So I use it for that. In corporates, I'm hearing people using it for similar things, putting proposals together, writing about products and getting ChatGPT to edit and give feedback on product descriptions. So if you say, here's the product description, it's for this market, can you please make it sound more attractive or irresistible to this market? And it will then put the words in that because of our humility frames, we're not terribly good at talking up stuff, whereas ChatGPT is shameless. It'll talk your stuff up no end.
Yes. Oh, Donna, I think you've just really nailed something there. Our humility frames that we have as humans, ChatGPT does not. It's not a human, and it can be shameless. And I think that's great. And you said, hey, I have to say no, but in a way that's polite. I think whenever you have some written communication with some emotional resistance. Like, oh, this is kind of complicated and tricky. I sort of feel like I owe them, but I don't, this doesn't work for me. It's like, you could just say, hey, write an email response to this letter, copy, paste, or email, copy, paste, that is very polite and says no. Or emotionally, I remember I had a landlord who I think just had some unrealistic expectations for what a tenant was supposed to do. I mean, I won't go into details, but at one point I thought, okay, I'm sure this landlord is going to, drop in and find fault with all sorts of things and demand that we do all kinds of things. Like, how about you repaint some walls? Like, I'm pretty sure that's not my job as a tenant, but whatever. So I said, hey, write an email from a landlord that's utterly disgusted with the condition of a unit in the nastiest language possible, taking the role of the nastiest landlord ever. And so what was so funny was, so I read it and it was sort of like an inoculation or a vaccine or a preventative measure, because it's like, okay, this is not real. It's not a real human, but this is just the AI writing it up. And sure enough, once I read this harsh language that was AI generated, later on, I did get a harsh email from the landlord. And I was like, oh, I was expecting this. I prepared for this. And this isn't so bad. And it was genuinely helped my emotional coping with that situation because, I don't like being judged and told I'm doing a terrible job at something in any context. That's me.
Right. So it took the sting out of that because you had somehow prepared for it. And chances are the actual email you got was nowhere near as harsh as the one that ChatGPT generated.
No, it was about half as harsh.
Right. Now, and you've touched on something that lots of people are doing around things like feedback. And so, if I'm writing something and I say, give me feedback on my style, I don't get offended I call it Charlie, by the way. I don't get offended by Charlie because it's just a robot and it gives me really good structural, editorial, to the point, very distinct feedback. And so now I don't know why I would take it better from Charlie than I would from a human, but two things I reckon. One, there's the emotional aspect of working with a human. And secondly, the human probably wouldn't be that harsh with me, right? They'd probably couch it with a little bit of cotton wool around it or something like that. And so that's one side of it. The other side is Charlie doesn't get offended when you tell it writes you something and you say, actually, that's a big pile of rubbish. I need it done this way, this way, this way. And it apologizes, sorry about that. I'll
sorry,
have another go. Yes. Not quite in the dulcet tones of Hal, which is probably showing my age more than anything. But yes, no, it doesn't quite speak to me yet.
Okay, well, that's another thing. I guess now it can speak to you in the iPhone app and with some plugins. Haven't played with that yet, but I think that might just be handy, like on the car. Like you're thinking about something, you could have a little bit of a conversation. I assume you could use the Siri activation button. I don't know yet. Be safe, everybody, in your vehicles. don't look at your screens. But I assume you can have some voice activated, get back and forth conversations, which might be handy, so I can then read that later and maybe actually get some good thought work done while driving, which is often hard to do because you're not looking at a screen or a notebook to write with. So that's kind of cool.
Well, the thing that I find when I'm driving is it's accessing, usually if I'm driving particularly long distances, which is just about everywhere in Australia that you're driving long distances between one place and another. And so I go into that really awesome alpha brainwave state, which is often when my creativity kicks in. So you're absolutely right. So whether it's, hey, Siri, make a note of this, or hey, Charlie or ChatGPT, let's have a conversation about this. I think it's a useful tool to think about. But you've touched on something else in here around, again, the aspect of literacy or creativity, where some people say, I'm terrible at written communication, but I can talk about my ideas. And so maybe you're struggling to explain in written form. So you talk it through, record it into ChatGPT, ask it then to construct whatever output you're looking for, like an awesome proposal letter or something like that. Or lots of people are using it to help them get their resumes in good shape, their cover letters in good shape. Just be very careful that you edit it, because it's starting to get pretty obvious when people, I mean, there's things you can do to not make it obvious, but if you're not very well versed with it, a straight copy and paste out of ChatGPT is a little obvious, can be a little obvious.
That's right. I found, because we've been experimenting with it in all kinds of contexts, in terms of writing episode titles and teasers and descriptions, it doesn't do as good a job as we humans do in our humble opinions of ourselves. But it can spark a few ideas like, oh, that is a good turn of a phrase. Yeah, I'll grab that. Okay. Oh, okay. I like that sentence there. Okay, we'll take that. So it can be a nice little starting point. And sometimes your copy doesn't have to be smashingly captivating. It's like, yeah, good enough. Good enough for this email response, copy paste done. Other times it can be a launching point. But one of my favorite little tricks is I'll just ask for sheer quantity. I'll say, give me 20 potential titles for this summary. And then it's like, ooh, I like this word from number 2 and that word from number 7. And thank you for your inspiration. Your work is done here, even though I took none of the titles that it actually gave me.
And that's the shift that a lot of people are struggling to make, because many think of it as something like Google, where you go in and you put a command in and say, hey, give me a recipe for banana bread or something like that. Whereas you can go into ChatGPT and say, give me 10 recipes for gluten-free sweetish snacks, and then generate a shopping list that goes with that. And it'll give you, the whole thing. So the volume aspect is really powerful. I do the same thing, I'm playing around with blog titles. So one of the tricks that I do is if I know my target audience, which is often women in leadership positions who want to level up. So I say, this is my target audience. Give me a list of their hopes, fears, dreams, and aspirations. And then give me 3 suggested blog titles for each one. And then give me an absolutely irresistible, captivating headline that will draw people's attention. And boom, before I know it, I've got a quarter's worth of social media copy, or not copy, because I'll still go in and create much of it. I'll get it to help me, but at least I've got a plan in place and all my topics sorted out and that sort of thing. And this is where it really, for me, this is what I became interested in it. I became interested in the time savings that we could garner from it. So whether it's spending time and energy agonizing over an email response, or the time and energy to generate a social media plan for your target audience or whatever it might be. It's research out of MIT says you're saving at least 37%. I reckon it's more for me. I reckon it's taking me maybe only about 30% of the time to do some of this stuff.
Okay, that's cool. Well, so lay it on us. What are some of the hugest time savers? And if you got them, special prompts that you've generated that have helped you realize these time savings using ChatGPT?
Probably the first one is teaching. Of course, so I'm a writer, so that may be a bit different to some of your audience. I'm regularly writing articles and things. So I've taught it how to write in my style. So one of the very first prompts I did was, I told it its personality. You are an expert writing style analyzer. Analyze the following passages and play it back to me in a way that I can then, this is a bit convoluted, that I can then feed it back to you so future writing will be in this style. And so it makes sense of that. I then copied and pasted a couple of chapters from one of my books and it spits out and says, you have a very engaging conversational style using anecdotes and rhetorical questions. I go, awesome. Now, in the free version, I then say, I copy that in and say, I need an article, 700 words for this publication on this topic, using this style, get a start for me. Now, to make a start on any kind of, like a blank page, whether it's an email or a proposal or anything, that's often the hardest bit to overcome. So you never have to wait again, right? So I go in there and it gets me a start. And I would say rubbish first drafts are around 50% useful. So that's one thing, teaching it to write like me. Just FYI, the paid version now has an option in it where you can permanently put information like that. Anytime I ask you to write an article, use this information. And so you can now train it with your stuff. There's also plugins where I've been able to put PDF versions of my books and I say, write this article using the content from the following PDFs. So I don't have to worry about plagiarism now because it's using my stuff. So there are a couple of time savers for me straight away. That means that I can generate good quality content, still human edited, in a matter of an hour, whereas it could have taken me half a day to a full day sometimes to write something of reasonable quality. So that's the first thing, any writing task. I would say anytime you're stuck, as someone who's done a bit of research into what happens into our head when we start to get overwhelmed, we end up in cycles that uses a lot of energy and, 2 hours of agonizing and we still haven't got more than a sentence on a page. So whatever you're agonizing over, ask it. and it will give you at least some response. I think the volume thing is a good one because we can cut straight to the chase. Give me 10. You don't have to ask for one. Give me 10, 20, 30, however many you need. Things that, of a personal nature, I've got my 55-year-old sister-in-law likes 1980s country and Western music. Can you suggest 10 gift ideas for her that aren't records, as in CDs or music or whatever, under $50 because I'm a cheapskate. So boom, I have a list. So all my Christmas shopping now lists will be generated there. Meal planning, holiday planning. I'm about to jump in the car with, a couple of preteens. What's some great podcasts we could listen to? So it's an entertainment curator. They're all the things I'm using it for that just mean I can put my time and attention on the things that only a human can do in my life.
That's good. I like these sort of themes we're collecting here. So emotional writing. You got some hang-ups. We're humble. We're awkward. Just starting the writing. It's a blank page. It's intimidating. Give me a volume of ideas. Give me 20 options. A curator of things. And with that, I like it how you could say, hey, I'm looking for the music, for example, as it was 80s music, or like I want music kind of like artists A, B, C, and D. Now give me some more, which I think is pretty cool. And likewise even with podcast guests, it's like, hey, how do you else about your job is about this? We've had guests such as name, who might be some others. And it's funny. It's sort of like we've had them and them and them and them and them. It's like, well, we've already had them, but thanks for trying, ChatGPT.
Thanks. Nice effort.
You're in the right zone.
That's why sometimes I think of it as an eager intern, right? It's eager to give you all the stuff that you want, but doesn't always give you the right thing. But hey, just quickly on the playlist thing, there's a Spotify plugin now. So you can now give it access to your Spotify account. So when you say, I like artists like this, give me playlists for this. Oh, and by the way, then whack it into Spotify for me. So that's pretty cool.
That's good. I also, with curation, it's cool. Sometimes I will say, hey, I'm looking to do this. Give me a great book that will help me do just that. And so that's been fun.
Or even better, give me 10. Give me 10 great books.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Like, what's a good book to help me reprogram my brain to enjoy effort, struggle, and mistakes? ChatGPT recommends Mindset. And then it's like, okay, give me 10 more. And so it's like, oh yeah, all right, there we go. So we got Grit, Anti-Fragile, Art of Happiness, etc. So I just think that's pretty darn handy. And it works differently because sometimes it's different than keywords because it's like, sometimes I don't yet know the keywords. And sometimes I'll specifically say, hey, what's a word that means like Washington counts for like the seat of U.S. governmental power? That's a figure of speech. What it's like, oh, you're talking about metonymy. It's like, oh, yes, thank you. If I'm even saying that right. It's like, I didn't know the keyword, but it can generate that for me. So I dig that. Well, but maybe let's flip it on its head now, Donna. We've been speaking breathlessly about how great this tool is. What are some of the limitations? What are some requests that it's probably just going to fail us on, disappoint us on, and we would take its advice at our own peril?
Well, first of all, it does make stuff up because it's pulling information from all over the world. So it sometimes puts stuff together that's not quite right. So you got to, if you're writing, if I'm writing a book and I'm using, and by the way, I did to write my recent book, I did get Charlie to help me do that. So if I'm writing a book, I still go back to Google to check my references and stuff like that because that's important. I hate to say it, but it's often about the quality of the prompt that we do that means that you get a bit of rubbish from ChatGPT. So when people say, oh, I tried it once and I got a terrible response, I'm like, well, did you go back and have a conversation with it? Did you tell it was terrible? Did you give it some more parameters? So I got a bit frustrated this week because I was trying to get it to write me a story in the first person about some famous people. And it kept giving me almost obituary style responses. And I asked it 3 or 4 times and it still wasn't getting it right. So I kind of paused, went off, had a bit of a break, came back and recrafted my prompt and put the words in. And I don't want an obituary. And I started to get the right thing. So occasionally it kind of is smarter than its own good. It thinks that's what, in that case, it's trying to outthink or be that eager intern to satisfy what it thinks you're looking for and add a bit of extra value when I just didn't need it to do that. So for me, it comes back to the prompts. I think if you're looking for current data, there's no point asking it what the weather is like in San Francisco today because it will say, no, I can't help you with that because that's not what I'm for. once I violated their terms and the way in which they operate. There's this little message that comes up.
Oh, what did you do, Donna?
I know.
You naughty.
Well, I won't tell you because I was researching for a fictional book and I was using a real life person as the model for what I was doing. And so I asked a pretty tricky question about this real life person. And I think it was implying that I was either going to stalk them or murder them or something like that. I don't know. So I had to go and do it. There's a little please explain thing that I had to fill in. So on the one hand, that was a little bit frustrating, but on the other, I was kind of encouraged by that. So I would say that's efforts by the OpenAI folks to try and alleviate some of the fear that people have around it being used for evil.
Understood. And well, any other shortcomings you've seen? I guess when I've asked it to write compelling headlines, it's sort of fallen a little bit short, but I just say, give me a ton of options and I can mix and match and edit. That's cool. I think I've also found that someone said it very well, that AI can tell you, because that's how it works, is it's generally the next most likely word to come. So it tends to give you the most obvious answers as opposed to wildly creative answers, which I think I've found that to be the case. But sometimes the obvious thing is actually really handy. Like, thank you. I should have thought of that.
Yeah, if you're needing the obvious thing, it's awesome because sometimes I do that. I say, here's a pattern that I've created. Here's 2 points in a pattern because we know the world loves the rule of 3. So what could be the third? Give me 10 options for the third thing. And the first one is the obvious one. And I go, of course, why didn't I think of that? So that's useful. But I mean, I've told it to be, if I'm really wanting something different, I'll ask it to be a critic of whatever I'm talking about. So one time I was writing about burnout. And I said, be as if you're a critic of burnout and write me, 3 paragraphs on why you think burnout or what criticisms you have of burnout. Anyway, so it spat out this piece that said, burnout is just a thing made up by people who are lazy and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, that was fun. I would never use it in the article, but it was just fun to kind of get a big, kind of like what you did with your write me the nastiest possible email from a landlord thing. It gave me a bit of a, that's interesting. But I do ask it to say, give me the things. I've asked it several times, give me non-conventional, give me something out of the box. It's not quite capable of doing that. It's not able to do really, I don't think yet, the really abstract stuff, the connections that a human mind can make as well. So often when I say, give me the stuff that's non-conventional, I still get pretty conventional stuff from it.
It's true. And there's a Wall Street Journal article, which we'll link to, and I've mentioned in a recent podcast episode, about how AI was generating more and more creative new product ideas than some MBA students. And I had to read the full text of the paper, as I do. And I wasn't that impressed. I guess it can generate a lot of ideas fast, no doubt. That's very impressive that it can do that. But like the quality of the ideas were like a portable printer. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, that's nice, but you didn't invent that exists. There are many options for that. So it can't do that. But what I do like is sometimes I'll ask for it to engage me in metaphor. Like, hey, let's say that running a podcast is like captaining a ship in the ocean. What would be some of the elements of the metaphor? And that can help just spark my own ideas. And I find it handy in that regards. Or I'll say, give me advice on this issue as Yoda would, or as Tony Robbins would, or as Marshall Goldsmith would, or, and so that's just sort of fun to say, oh yeah, I guess Tony Robbins probably would say something kind of like that. And David Allen probably would say something like that. So sometimes I think that helps me a little bit in terms of it's not groundbreakingly novel, but it gives my own brain a shove in a direction to help me get to novel with a little bit of help.
Yeah, so I've got it because a couple of my favorite writers, because I love the way they think, Malcolm Gladwell and Steve Levitt. So I'll say, this is the topic. What are some points that if they were writing the article, what might they say about it? Because I'm looking for a slightly different angle. But you're right, it's just usually something to give me a bit of a poke or a bit of a shove in a direction when I'm stuck. And so I think this kind of comes back to this idea of in what aspects of your world do you just get stuck and you end up wasting your time spinning your wheels because you can't find an answer? On a more emotional level, I had a woman recently say to me that she'd been using it to help craft responses to ex who she was divorcing because she couldn't afford a lawyer. And her lawyer had said, if you give us the basic information we need, we'll then spend a small amount of time crafting the legal documents that are needed. But all the researchy stuff and all the kind of the back end stuff, if you can do the bulk of that, it'll save you a track ton of money. And so she told ChatGPT, you act as if you are my divorce lawyer, ask me a series of questions to be able to fill in all the paperwork. And she was able to get all the documentation that they needed collated and save herself a whole pile of money as part of her divorce, which I thought was now just quick disclaimer now, please do not use ChatGPT for legal documents. Yes, she still needed a lawyer to submit all that stuff, but yeah, it was a real game changer for her.
I also recommended ChatGPT to a friend going through a divorce. She was like, I got all these questions I'm supposed to answer. It's like, well, for a first draft, you might let me show you this. It's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So that is cool. You say when you're stuck, I've also found it's helpful when you're stuck, when you're researching and your search engines aren't getting it done. It's because, well, hey, the sad state of affairs of the internet in terms of searching is that many of the top search results are there very intentionally by companies with the budget who have hired search engine optimization professionals to accomplish that very goal, and they have succeeded. And so you might not actually be getting the most useful information. It's just like the most, quote, relevant and authoritative in the eyes of Google information. And that's in many ways gamed intentionally. And not everywhere, and often it works just the way it should, and so that we're delighted with the result. But sometimes I found when I can't find a product, ChatGPT can find it. Like I need to find a car seat that's like super narrow so I can get 3 across. And it's like, I'm having a hard time finding that in the Google and the Amazon. And then this thing is ChatGPT is recommending stuff that was not popping up in those searches. Like, well, that's very helpful.
Yeah, look, I'm going to couch this with at this point in time, there doesn't seem to be that kind of product bias. Like, if you pay someone a chunk of money, your products end up being at the top of the list no matter what search criteria is put in there. I would agree. So, but I'd also say the risk is that we treat it like a search engine because it's not a search engine. It's someone you're having a conversation with. It's more like you've got someone sitting next to you that you turn around and go, hey, I'm really struggling finding this product and clearly my search string in Google's not working. Can you help me maybe redefine what might be the parameters I need to get Google to work better for me? That also bypasses all the paid ads so I can actually get to the product that I need.
Absolutely.
And get it to help you craft your Google search, right?
Yeah, it is. I think about it. I read somewhere it is an intelligence, but it's an alien intelligence. And I thought that was well said. And I like to think of it as my alien intern who has read the whole internet or a good chunk of it. And so it's like, you've read a lot of stuff, alien intern, but what do you think about this? Alien, because it's going to be different than human. So watch out. And intern, because, hey, I'm in charge. I am never going to blindly copy paste what you say. I'm going to at the very least read it and most likely pick and choose to edit heavily. And that's that.
What you've actually got is an alien intern that has a hangover.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're keen and eager to do the work for you. It's going to be a bit non-human and alien in its form, but you better check it because, sometimes it's just a bit dim on certain days if it's had a big night the night before.
Well said. An alien intern with a hangover. That's, we can get some AI to generate art to that effect for us as well. That's a whole nother episode, I guess.
That's a whole other episode.
Well, Donna, any final thoughts before we shift gears? Well, first of all, your book is called The ChatGPT Revolution. Got to make sure that title gets in there, right? It sounds like it talks about these sorts of things. Anything specifically you want to mention about the book proper?
Oh, only that you can grab it from any reputable online book selling place or my website. But look, I'd say when my publisher approached me to write it, we were like, what's the angle we want on it? So it's very much a get me started, I'm interested. It's probably already, in fact, I know there's passages in it that's already a little bit out of date because the technology is moving very quickly, but it'll get you started and get you going and get you interested. And in terms of, I think you started to say what would be a last message, I think, around this or any kind of last comment I'd say. I would say get interested, get curious, And saying we have in Australia is just have a crack, have a go at it, go in and try it out and play with it. Be playful at first, which is why the list of prompts that'll be in the show notes are not terribly earth-shattering, but there's something to get you going with. And you can't break it, right? It's not like you can get in there and go, oops, I broke ChatGPT. The worst that can happen is you just get a somewhat rubbish response, in which case you tell it, gee, that was a bit rubbish. Try again from this angle. So have a go, have a crack is what I would say.
All right. Well, now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
From David Allen, you mentioned him earlier. The human mind is for having ideas, not storing them.
Mm-hmm. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
So Taylor's study, it's called the pig iron studies from the late 19th century. I love them. He discovered that you can actually achieve way more if you take plenty of breaks throughout your day.
And a favorite book?
Apart from my own, I can't stop thinking about 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. Awesome.
And what do you love about the book?
Look, it just got me thinking differently about the finite nature of time. And he has a really interesting angle around settling. So we're told nearly all our lives, don't settle. You could always go for more. And his position is, well, why wouldn't you settle and make good with what you've got rather than constantly seeking this better job, better relationships, better something? And I have not stopped thinking about that, actually. It's really got me going.
All right. And a favorite tool?
I'm afraid I'm going to talk about my own, which is, it comes from one of my books called The First 2 Hours, which is a way in which I think about how I do my work and how I do my to-do lists. There's some things that are better to do in the morning and some that are better to do in the afternoon. So I'm happy to share a PDF of that tool as well in the show notes, if you like.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And a favorite habit?
Early to bed, early to rise. That's me. I like to get plenty of sleep.
Absolutely. And is there a favorite nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often?
Yeah. Pay attention to the clock in your body, not the one on the wall.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
Just to my website, donnamcgeorge.com. And I'm a shameless self-promoter. You'll find me on most social media platforms. And my name's a bit unusual, Donna McGeorge.
Okay. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Absolutely. It's a version of something that Sean Patrick Flannery said, which is do something today that your future self will thank you for.
All right. Donna, thank you. This has been a treat. I wish you much luck and fun with ChatGPT and all you're up to.
Thanks, Pete. Great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
I love what Donna had to share specifically about the emotional writing. It's like, oh, geez, how do I say this? This is kind of awkward. I don't know how to start. Just like, write a nice email saying no to this request. Okay. And then resistance just slashed. It's like, and you're probably not going to use verbatim what it says, but that is an awesome way to get past that procrastination and say, oh, okay, you know what? Actually, half or more of these words are totally usable. So let's tweak and boom. Wow, the thing I was agonizing over is now done. Thanks, ChatGPT. Emotional writing. That is a good way to put it. Again, the show notes, the transcript, the links to items that we've referenced are found at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP903. I hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.